Well, first of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you all for coming, particularly those of you who came by boat. There's people here from all over the place. There's people here from Crawley. Can we hear from them? There's people here from over the water, Essex. I think there's probably a lot of people from London. And there were lots of people invited from other places, but after they heard that there were so many people coming from Crawley and Essex, they declined. I have to start by saying that I had a difficult morning this morning. I woke up about 6 and thought, right, got to write a wedding speech. I got up and struggled for inspiration, and as we do these days, went to Google and YouTube, and I found the most fantastic Father's Day wedding speech that you ever see. It was hilarious, it was moving, it was poignant. People were in fits of laughter, in tears, and I thought, blimey, I should have started working on this speech earlier. In fact, I probably should have started working on the speech when people started working on the bunting, 1997. So then I thought, well, actually I know someone who's good at writing. I'll get on the train, go down to Billingshurst, have a chat. So I got on the train, and Sam was going to pick me up at the station. And as the train sailed through Billingshurst without stopping, I waved at him in the car park and went to Barnum, which is really nice. And I had a lovely view of Arundel Castle and all those places down there. It's really nice, I recommend it. Got back, and then of course was immediately involved in doing things. So please bear with me, because the speech didn't actually have very long to get written. One of the things I do have to say to it though is, I do know something about the rules and the protocol for wedding speeches.
I look nice.
Anna always looks lovely. When someone says something funny, you laugh. When someone says something that's meant to be funny but isn't, you laugh. When someone said something sad or poignant, that's a long word that means sloppy, you go, ah. If you're not sure if something is funny or poignant, you laugh. And if people point at you while they're dabbing their eyes with a handkerchief, you know you got it wrong. So I have to say that we do have a standby audience waiting in the barn. So if you're not good enough, we can swap you over and start again. I have to put my glasses We're getting the hang of it. Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're so glad that you could come here today to share this very special day with us. And it's not just an ordinary welcome, it's a very special Kingsmead welcome. I want to tell you a story about the first day I ever came here, the first night I ever came here, which was just before Christmas, or just after Christmas, about 40 years ago. And I came down on a motorbike to see my girlfriend, Chris, and I'm a London boy, and the countryside was a mysterious place to me. It was just somewhere that you went through on the way to the seaside. So I came down here with some trepidation on my motorbike on a very dark night, eventually found the drive and came up the drive. Now this was a very different place all those years ago. This is the countryside. Younger people may not believe this, but there were still wolves around in those days. Bears, wounded buffalo, about which we'll hear more later. And the area where you've parked your cars was a great swamp. And a swamp, in the lights of a motorcycle, looks surprisingly like a sort of flat road area. So I plunged into this swamp on a motorbike and was stood there in a sort of cloud of steam rising from the engine, up to my knees in mud and water, listening to the sound of wolves howling, buffaloes mooing, and possibly crocodiles sort of making a sound. And I stood there and I couldn't shift the bike out of the mud, but neither could I let it go because it would have disappeared under the water. So I stood there going, help, help. But eventually I did get out, found a solid place for the bike, and eventually found my way up to the house and presented myself where I'd never been before, covered in mud and whatever else was in that swamp. And I was immediately welcomed into the house by Amy. Chris wasn't here at the time. And clothes were taken away and washed and dried, and I was just made extremely welcome. And that welcome has been extended to everybody today. It was extended to all of the guests that we had here 35 years ago or so, when Chris and I, and Trish and Chris O'Brien were married here in a double wedding. We had a wedding with Chris and Chris and Chris and Trish. I'm still not sure who I married. All such things are possible. And that same welcome was extended at that time. Please look at notes. Back then, Chris and I were intent on changing the world. Looking around now, we see that actually we haven't even challenged the fact that the women do the bunting and the men make the speeches. Although I promise my speech will be shorter than the bunting. So we're here again to celebrate Anna and Mark's wedding. Once again, Amy and John and all the Sylvester family have welcomed you all, and I'd like to say thank you. And as you heard earlier on today, in August this year, Amy and John celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary, and I'd like you all to join me in a toast to Amy and John.
Amy and John!
Yeah! Amy and John! Yeah, on the camera.
That's my first drink.
This camera's...
Okay, now to the main event. Anna was born 31 years ago.
How old? Oh, this is going to be a long speech.
Let's face it, babies, present company accepted, babies are pretty ugly. Present company accepted, I say, I'm diplomatic here. Fat and bald, and they make a noise at one end and a mess at the other. And that was, always my view. But not Anna. Anna was beautiful. I remember her birth like it was yesterday. It wasn't an easy birth, it was quite difficult, and when her head came out, it was sort of cone-shaped. And I was horrified. I thought we'd given birth to some alien. I had the painful bit because I had Chris gripping my hand, digging her nails in. But those little soft infant bones soon clicked back into place, and she was just beautiful.
Okay.
She had fingers and toes, exactly the right number. And each finger and toe had a perfect little nail and a perfect little half moon. Absolutely beautiful, it was a miracle. Her skin was so smooth and perfect because she'd been cooked for exactly the right amount of time. And she had eyes, 2 of them. And they sort of opened and closed just like they were meant to. It was perfect, and she was beautiful, and she was our miracle. I was amazed. And I've never seen her look so beautiful until today. Am I doing okay?
You just said babies were really ugly.
Did I not include the bit about heckling in the rules?